On January 3, 2026, the United States carried out one of the most controversial military operations in modern Latin American history. In a coordinated action involving airstrikes and ground forces, U.S. troops targeted key locations across Venezuela, including areas near the capital, Caracas. The operation resulted in the capture of Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores. Both were flown to the United States, reportedly to face criminal charges. The mission, known as Operation Absolute Resolve, was announced by U.S. President Donald Trump as a swift and decisive strike against what he described as a criminal regime. Almost immediately, the operation sparked global shockwaves. Venezuelan officials condemned the action as an act of military aggression and demanded proof that Maduro was alive, calling the event unprecedented in the region for decades. So why was Nicolás Maduro targeted? The United States accused Maduro of narco-terrorism, large-scale drug trafficking, and deep corruption, claiming elements of his government were tied to international criminal organizations. Prior to the operation, the U.S. had placed a $50 million reward on information leading to his arrest, the largest ever offered for a sitting head of state. U.S. officials also argued that Maduro's presidency was illegitimate, citing disputed elections, widespread human rights abuses, and what they described as threats to U.S. national security. While the U.S. framed the operation as a law enforcement action, many international legal experts questioned whether the use of military force was justified under international law. Inside Venezuela, the effects were immediate and destabilizing. Maduro's capture created a sudden power vacuum. Venezuela's vice president, Delcy Rodriguez, was named acting president, though she maintained that Maduro remained the country's legitimate leader. The Venezuelan government accused the United States of violating national sovereignty, triggering protests, civil unrest, and calls for resistance. Economically and socially, the situation worsened. Venezuela had already endured years of economic collapse, sanctions, and political instability. The capture deepened uncertainty, increased international isolation, and intensified fears of long-term instability. Reports from Caracas described widespread panic and casualties during the military strikes, further adding to public trauma. For many Venezuelans and governments across Latin America, the operation raised serious concerns. Instead of liberation, some feared the action signaled a return to foreign domination and intervention in the region. The consequences did not stop at Venezuela's borders. In the United States, President Trump stated that the U.S. would temporarily oversee Venezuela's transition, including influence over governance and the country's vast oil resources. Domestically, the operation strengthened Trump's hardline foreign policy image, but also reignited debate over executive power, military authority, and the limits of U.S. intervention abroad. On the global stage, legal experts argued the operation likely violated international law, particularly principles that prohibit the use of force without international approval. Reactions from other nations were divided. Some condemned the move as illegal aggression, while others cautiously supported efforts toward regime change. The long-term impact remains uncertain, but one thing is clear. The capture of Nicolás Maduro may permanently reshape U.S.-Latin America relations, heighten geopolitical tensions, and set a precedent for how powerful nations intervene in sovereign states. Whether this action leads to stability or prolonged conflict will depend on what happens next, not just in Venezuela, but across the global political landscape.